a stranger with a gun came upon two teens taking pictures under a rising full moon. But violence is only the beginning of this story.
Sometimes I thought, there are no miracles. Yeah, there are, and this is a big one.
I'm Amy Donaldson, and I've spent my career talking about how lives are undone by violence. The Letter is a podcast about how lives are remade. Follow The Letter at theletterpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, welcome to Project Recovery, a podcast about addiction, but more importantly, about recovery. It's brought to you by our friends at useonlyasdirected.org. They got a 3-part solution for the opioid epidemic. That's speak out, opt out, and of course, throw out. My name is Casey Scott. This would be the part where I introduce you to Dr. Matt, but Dr. Matt's not here. He was on a vacation up in Idaho, and I would have said something like, oh man, that'd have been nice having therapist money up there, living on a lake, hanging out with all your kids. He'd have came back and said something clever like, well, you did have therapist money, but then you got a DUI and you threw it all away. And I'd say, touche, Matt, but we're coming together to make sure we've got this podcast and giving back. But the reality is that when he got back, he was a little sick, had a cough, a little bit of a itchy throat. So he did the responsible thing. He went and got tested for COVID. He texted me last night and says, I'm getting tested. I'll let you know how it goes in the morning. He sent back and says, I'm negative, but I'm just way too sick and congested to come and do the podcast. Why don't you soldier on without me, little buddy? I said, don't call me little buddy. He said, soldier on, little buddy. And I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. So what we're going to do today is it's just me and my guest, Damion. How are you, buddy?
Well, man.
Now, Damion is in recovery. He's coming up on 3 years. He's a graduate from Renaissance Ranch. He's also the CFO, which means he's the Chief Financial Officer. We're going to find out more about that in just a second. But normally at the beginning of a podcast, I'd ask Dr. Matt what's going on with him, and he'd go back and forth. He'd tease me for not reading a book. I'd agree. And then I would say something that's been on my mind or something currently that's going in with me on my recovery. And the topic I wanted to talk about today is the balance. We had a Facebook post, is there a healthy addiction? And I was wondering if recovery could be your addiction. I know you need to put your recovery first, and you need to make it very important in your life where everything else can fall by the wayside. But I don't want to be known just for recovery. Do you understand me, Damion?
Mm-hmm.
Because I love what I do. I love this podcast, and I am grateful and thankful for everything that recovery has given me thus far. It's absolutely amazing. But I also want to get out and get back to things that I enjoyed and what I was good at and kind of do that. So I'm trying to find that happy balance. In your 3 years, have you tried to find that balance, or is recovery still the most important thing to you? I mean, it's important to me. It is the most important thing, because if I don't stay sober, I lose everything. But I also want to start getting back into some of the things that I really enjoyed prior to, recovery.
For me, I have tried to find that balance. It's a difficult one to find, and for the first several months when I first got sober, life was hard. It was worse than it had ever been.
Yeah.
So I don't know how I stayed sober through it. I just worked my steps in my program and tried to be honest with what was going on and sharing that kind of stuff. But it was really difficult, and I actually hated it. I wanted to go back. But I also knew the several times I'd almost died, just the unmanageability of being in addiction, the people I'd hurt. I lost my children, I lost my house, I lost my car, I lost jobs, I lost everything a few times until I was finally willing from enough pain to do something different. But now, after consistency and time and continually doing things that work, I'm able to enjoy life more. But for me, recovery still has to come first, and then I build my life around that. There are meetings that I go to every week that I don't miss. There are things that I do every day that I don't miss, because that's my commitment to do something right that day. And I just try to stay sober for today, not future tripping or worrying about the past or catastrophizing what's going to happen, because I don't know. And that's one of the most powerful things is I don't know.
Every once in a while, I like to give quotes that I learned in recovery, and this one always stuck out to me. They go, if you got one foot in the past and one foot in the future, you're pissing on the present.
That's exactly right.
That's
exactly right.
There's nothing to be doing.
For sure.
For me, before this podcast, I did a lot of TV, I did radio, and I was known for being somewhat funny and entertaining. And so I always wanted to dip my toe back into that world. And I was offered the ability and the chance to do a new podcast. It's called Dadtastic. I do it with Tom Hackett, and he is the punter from Australia for the University of Utah. And we just kind of share our stories of being dads. And so when I was getting ready to do that, I wanted to know, am I still funny? Am I going to be okay? And right now the podcast is doing wonderful, but that's what I'm trying to do, is find that happy balance and figure out where I'm going and what I'm about to do. And it's a little bit scary, but it's exciting because for the first time in 30 plus years, I'm attacking it with a sober brain. I'm still going to make mistakes. I know I'm going to make mistakes because I'm only human.
Of course.
But the road ahead of me, I can navigate sober. And that is exciting to me because it's like a whole new world. It's like somebody finally pulled off the blinders, and I could see how beautiful this world is because there are so many blessings. There are so many surprises around the corner, and, it's not all going to be good, but I'm excited for what's to come. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense.
And so that's why I love doing this podcast, because I love inviting people like yourself in to share your story, because your story in itself will be able to help somebody as they navigate their world in a way up sober mountain, and that's kind of a cool thing to give back. And, a lot of us in recovery, we do give back because that's the promise, because when we needed it, someone was there for us.
Absolutely.
So we want to be there for someone else when they ask. And a lot of people are asking by listening to this podcast. So Damion, let's get started with your story. Where does it begin?
Oh, goodness. I'd say, thinking about my story, I grew up in North Carolina, was born in Utah, and I can remember just different instances in my life, but the first thing that comes to mind, I was washing cars at my dad's business. He's a general contractor, and he had a place of business, and we lived up on the hill behind it. And I was, I think, about 11 years old. And my brother and I were washing cars to earn some money, his work vans and work trucks and stuff. And, just a normal day. And I'd gone inside his building to try to find some towels to dry something off or something. And I was moving some things around. And I saw this bottle in the back on this shelf and in the workroom. And I looked at it, and it was dark, kind of charcoal looking. And I pulled it out and read on it. It said Mum Cognac, I thought. It was cognac.
Mm-hmm.
And something inside of me in my brain said, well, why don't you open it up? I was curious. So I untwisted the cap and smelled it, and it smelled awful, And then something inside of me was like, why don't you take a drink? And so I did.
Which shows you the power of alcohol and the lure, because it looked horrible, it smelled horrible, but still something in your head said, you should try that. It
looked shady as hell, I'll be honest with you. But there's something inside of me, and whatever that voice was, I just listened to it. I was like, that's a great idea. And I've had great ideas my whole life, which got me into treatment and 2 divorces. But
I think we have the same idea maker.
Geez. And so anyway, I took a drink, and I felt amazing.
Just one little drink. You remember that?
One sip. I mean, it was probably not even a sip. It was probably a gulp.
Yeah.
I was an alcoholic from the start, but I had a big gulp, and I got buzzed, and I wasn't scared anymore. I felt like I could conquer the world. I just didn't even know how afraid and unworthy and unloving and all that kind of stuff that I had felt until I took that drink, and I didn't feel it anymore.
Did you go out and tell your brother, hey, look what I found?
Oh, I took the bottle out to him and said, hey, why don't you try this? And so we both drank, and I think we washed 15 cars that day. It was the best time I ever had. We even ran the well dry, But looking back at that, and I didn't know it at the time, the one thought that I kept having over and over, I want to feel this way the rest of my life.
Because you felt normal.
I felt amazing. No fear. I didn't hate myself in those moments.
So at 11 years old, you and your little brother find a bottle, drink it, clean 15 cars. And from that on, you wanted to feel like that.
I absolutely did. And I kept that bottle for a while and would drink from it on occasion. And I probably had that about a year, and then I didn't have any more alcohol, but then I found some more. It was in my dad's suitcase. And I didn't know these were my dad's bottles. He is an alcoholic in recovery as well, but at that time, I didn't know. My mom knew, but it was a secret. So there was a lot of family emotional dishonesty in my family. We didn't talk about that kind of stuff. We didn't talk about feelings and things. And so,
well, if he's hiding his alcohol and his alcoholism, he can't really ask for the bottle.
For sure.
Hey, where did that bottle go?
Yeah, for sure. I found a bottle of white label whiskey, and it didn't matter to me what it tasted like. It always tasted awful at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But the feeling, that's what got me. I just always felt like I could conquer and do anything. And I remember, again, my brother and I are drinking out of another bottle because I always shared it with him. And I've got 5 younger brothers, but my brother Cameron and I, we're just, I think, 16 months apart in age. So we're real close.
Irish twins.
Yeah. And he and I would drink and do those things and get into all kind of mischief and trouble. But he's okay. The disease isn't in him like it is in me.
And so at 11, you start drinking, and did you keep that going all through high school?
I did. There were always parties. I didn't always have access to it, but there'd be somebody who had a cousin that looked old and had a mustache or a beard and could go get us something. There were times that I took beer to school. I would go to seminary in the morning. I was raised LDS and served a Mormon mission and blessed the sacrament and all those things, but I was still drinking a lot and hated myself for it because I was raised a different way and was hiding that stuff. It was a big secret. I was perpetuating those secrets.
And your parents never caught on or got wind of?
Not really. I came out and told my dad one time when I was about 16. I think I'd found another one of his stash or something and told him, and he was really upset. And the way he handled it is he went to the bar that night. He left and went to the bar, and so I went with my mom to go pick him up from the bar and to drive him home. And he came out with a Coors Light, long neck, and I had never seen my dad drunk before, And that was a scary moment for me. And my mom was crying, and it's the only time that ever happened. But
left an impression.
It did. Yeah, it sure did. And of course, later on in life, I love to look back at that experience and, I would blow that up look how pitiful I am. Look, my dad's awful. And it just wasn't true. He's a good man. He just didn't know how to handle his life either. He was just suffering too.
Now, throughout high school, did you play sports?
I did. Yeah, I played baseball, basketball, football my senior year. I went to seminary full-time, church full-time. I was functioning, and I didn't drink every day. It was mostly on the weekends when there was a big party. But if there was ever a party, I was plastered.
Mm-hmm.
I could never drink like a gentleman, never.
But the time comes that you get called for a mission.
Yep. Turned in my papers, went and served a mission, got called to Argentina. Served a couple years there. It was a beautiful experience. I learned so much, had a lot of spiritual experiences. It strengthened my testimony and the gospel and all those kinds of things.
But you spent the 2 years alcohol-free?
Alcohol-free, yeah. Alcohol-free, didn't have access to it. There was a lot of coca leaves down there, and I was curious about that, but I never bought any or did anything like that. So I served an honorable mission.
And after your 2 years, you come back?
Come back and start working. Went back to BYU. I was going to BYU at the time. And it was funny, my freshman year, I did go to some parties and found some alcohol and got into some academic trouble. I was on academic probation. I was trying to hide that from my parents. But after my mission, I went back and did pretty well. But after my junior year, I just didn't want to be there anymore. It just didn't fit for me. And I used the excuse because I love to be a victim. That's one of my character defects.
Well, most addicts do.
Yeah.
That's
blame.
Yeah. That's the first job we take.
Yeah.
I'll be a victim. Yeah.
For sure. And so I I blamed it on the fact I didn't have enough money because I didn't want to go look at a student loan. I was probably too scared to check it out, to be honest. But moved back in with my parents in North Carolina after driving across the country with what little I had, and got a job at a local textile mill. And at that point, I hadn't discovered pain pills or any other kind of pills. It was just strictly alcohol here and there. But I actually didn't drink a lot during that time. I started working and then going back to school. One of my brothers, Jairus, who's the fourth in line. I've got 5 younger ones, I think I mentioned, and he was going to school up in Southern Virginia University, which is an LDS school up in Virginia, in Buena Vista. And so he was going there, and I went up to see him a couple of times, and there was this girl that I kept seeing there, and I just was so attracted to her, and I just thought she was the most gorgeous thing, and found out her name. And anyway, she came down to visit my brother, and we ended up starting to date and things like that, and ended up marrying her, in the temple. And I wanted that picture perfect LDS life, returned missionary, Eagle Scout,
the cover of Enzyme
graduate, right. And married in the temple, and we could start an eternal family, and all. I wanted all of those dreams. I believed it.
Which sounds great. I mean, it is the dream.
Yeah. But it, after being married with her, and I didn't drink during that time when I was married to her, we ended up having a son, and I finished school, and then we moved down to where her parents were and bought a house, and life just seemed to be going well, but the whole time I'm depressed. I'm anxious. I'm like, I have all of this wonderful stuff happening. Why do I feel the way that I feel?
Why isn't this enough? I should be elated. I should be happy.
And it was a really rough time. Good in a lot of ways, and I felt the Spirit, and I felt good, but then I also just felt like in those quiet moments when I was by myself, I couldn't stand to be by myself. I hated myself.
So did you seek out treatment like therapists, or talk to the bishop, or,
I talked to the bishop, a few bishops, and I talked to bosses at work, coworkers. I tried to be honest with how I was feeling, and I was prescribed all kinds of medication, Zoloft and Wellbutrin. They thought it was depression. They thought maybe I was bipolar, and tried a different test and tried to seek it clinically that way. And that stuff would help for a little bit, for a while. It really just made me numb more than anything, so I wasn't really feeling it all,
And that's no way to live.
It's not, because once you're numb and you're not feeling, you can't feel good or bad. You're just numb.
Hey, you're listening to Damion's story. He's with Renaissance Ranch here on Project Recovery. We'll be right back with more of it. And once again, thank you for listening.
A stranger with a gun came upon 2 teens taking pictures under a rising full moon. But violence is only the beginning of this story.
Sometimes I thought, there are no miracles. Yeah, there are, and this is a big one.
I'm Amy Donaldson, and I've spent my career talking about how lives are undone by violence. The Letter is a podcast about how lives are remade. Follow The Letter at theletterpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to Project Recovery. We're listening to Damion's story. He's with Renaissance Ranch. We talked about your early start down the alcoholism road, and it started with 11 when you found a bottle of your dad's. We fast forward to you're married in the temple. All things seem to be going well. You're checking all the boxes, but you're feeling a little depressed, a little not yourself. You've tried talking to people. You got prescribed Zoloft and a couple other things like Wellbutrin, but you just felt it was numbing you more than fixing the problem. So then where'd that lead you?
Well, so at that time, after we had moved down to Pinehurst, I found another job as an assistant project manager and an accountant. My degree's in accounting, but I was like, you know what? I just did accounting because it was easy for me. I don't really like it that much. Mm-hmm. I don't really want to do that.
I heard the Christmas parties are dope.
I don't fit the profile, you know? Right. And so I started working for this commercial building company and some good folks called the Canoys in North Carolina, father and son, and the father had an architectural firm and the son had a commercial building firm. And so anyway, I start down that road, and we were building different churches and things like that. And I was, we're also doing a personal home, a big home for someone down in Pinehurst, which is a big golfing community.
Oh, yeah, I know
There's
Pinehurst.
some money down there.
Yeah,
you know? And so we were building this house, and I was helping to move some things in with a refrigerator, and I was pulling this refrigerator up over the threshold, and a guy was pushing it and trying to help me get it in, and that thing slipped, and I fell, and the refrigerator fell on me. Ooh. And so I landed on my rear, but kind of on my hip too. And anyway, I just had all this pain. And so that's when I discovered pain pills.
So you went to the doctor and they said, hey, try this.
It was, I went to the doctor, had some x-rays, and it was a legitimate thing. Like, I was hurt. Mm-hmm. You know, it was sore, and I could hardly move. And so I get prescribed some medication, painkillers. I don't remember exactly what it was. It was probably hydrocodone or something like that. But that opened me up to a whole new world of addiction, because I was like, I can do this. And I felt amazing taking it, right?
So do you feel like you got the same feeling with the pain pills that you did with the alcohol when you were 11?
It was similar. It was similar feeling. The thing that was attractive to me about it was that it was prescribed. So it was legal. I didn't have to sneak around. That was, and I felt amazing doing it.
Nobody's going to smell pain pills on my breath.
Right. Yeah, it was all about that, for sure. I mean, it helped the pain too, but it was more about how it made me feel. So I loved it.
When you were prescribed it and you took it, how quick did the addiction or the abuse start?
It probably took a year, you know. But to be perfectly honest, like, I loved it from the get-go. Some people take pain medication. They're like, I don't like the way it makes me feel. I can't think clearly. I loved the haze. The euphoria that came, like, that was it for me. I just couldn't get enough. And so I actually took that first few medications that was prescribed, and I went back a few times, took it as prescribed and things. But slowly but surely, as medication ran out, I wanted more, even though my back wasn't hurting. So I started to lie about it. You know, I've got this injury. They ended up having me go in for an MRI. I would take my wife with me so I didn't look so suspicious, asking for more, you know.
And what were you telling your wife at the time?
That I'm just in so much pain, sweetie. Just lying to her like I was everybody else.
And so you kind of, it sounds like doctor shopped, or you may be the same doctor, but you keep coming up with excuses of why you need it.
Same doctor. I didn't do the doctor shopping thing, but I certainly went a lot to where they were like, we need to have an MRI. And when they had an MRI, they showed my L1, S1, and I don't know all the stuff in your spine, but I had a compressed disc and a bulging disc, and then they wanted to operate in some things. And I was like, no, just keep prescribing me pills. And so I had a prescription for every 2 weeks, and that was not lasting that long.
Did the doctor ever go, hey, you might have a problem with this?
No, he didn't. In fact, I think I held the doctor kind of hostage. I gave him an ultimatum, like, if you don't prescribe me what I want, I'll go somewhere else. And so he agreed, you know, to prescribe those. But I had to take drug tests and things, but it wasn't lasting what it was supposed to. It was supposed to be 2 weeks, and I was through them in a few days by that point.
And so when you could no longer get them legally, did you have to go to the street?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, the way I did it is I started asking around, you know, really, really covert, like, you know, asking coworkers, and I looked for the ones that I was judging the hell out of people, because I judged myself too, right? And so I would judge others and say, I bet that person knows. I bet you they know somebody. And so I'd make a comment about, my back's really hurting, and, you know, I don't want to go to the doctor. It's too expensive, even though I already was. So I'd lie to them too to get what I wanted. Yeah. Which is the pattern of my life, because it was always about me.
And, you know, even in my addiction, it was like that. I didn't remember who I lied to or what I was promising this way or that way. And that became such a burden and so heavy, because you didn't know how many balls you had in the air and which one was going to drop.
Yep.
And so, you know, we've had people on the podcast before that, you know, when they'd find out somebody in the neighborhood got surgery, You know?
Oh, I was great at that.
I think they might need a casserole.
I think I might need to go over and visit them and then check their cabinets.
And there was a lot of that. And so did that get you in any trouble?
It did. Getting back to mine, like buying it off the street, I had found a contact who knew someone, and then I could go purchase these, as many as I wanted. And I had a good job at the time. I'd actually changed jobs and was working for a cabinetry place where I was designing kitchens and making good money. It's the first time I made six figures, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And every bit of that money extra that I made was going towards drugs, buying them off the street. Found a guy, and I would get oxycodones and OxyContins, and I tried all different types of pills and which ones I liked, and I'd go meet him every few weeks and bring a bunch of cash and take it out of the account, lie to my wife that I was, using that for good purposes and investing in things, which wasn't true.
Was she ever kind of hip to what was going on? Did that cause relationship problems at home?
It definitely did. When you're lying to someone, they can feel that.
Oh yeah,
they can feel that, and it really put her in a bad spot. And my parents-in-law too. At that time, we were living with them. We had our own place, but they had gone overseas for one of his contracts for his work, and we were going to live in their place for a period of time and rent ours out or lease it out. And then they came back a little early, and so we were together for several months. And at that point, even my addiction just got so bad. Like I was just stoned all the time. In fact, when my son at that time I think was 3 or 4, and then our daughter came, and I was on pills then. My youngest daughter came, and while my wife was up in the hospital bed going through labor, I went and met somebody down in the parking lot to pick up so that I could, get through it.
When you say that statement that you just said, how does that feel?
Now?
Yeah.
It's not really funny, but I'm not ashamed of that anymore because I've done enough work.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping that my story can reach someone and let them know that they're not alone, that we do these types of things.
Because we've had people on the podcast, even though I've said some things that I just cringe, but back in my addiction, it made total sense to me. But now I look back, and you're right, there is some sort of like, that's how bad it was. And the only reason I can somewhat laugh it off is because I know where I'm at now and what I've gone through to get here. And without acknowledging that, I wouldn't be where I am today. And to act like that never happened is doing a disservice to your recovery and what everything you went through to get here.
It's not honest.
Yeah, and you got to run an honest program.
It has to be about honesty and owning.
Yeah, you got to own it.
You've got to own it. And so, yeah, getting back to those types of things, like even prior to that, when I had this contact that I was meeting, I actually, on a Thanksgiving holiday with family there, made up some excuse that I needed to go measure a house for cabinets, and I took my son and went and met and picked up. Like I would do things like that consistently without a second thought of putting his life in danger, my own. I drove intoxicated. I drove high with my kids in the car. And now it's like, wow, that was some serious insanity. Like I was insane. And that was just part of my story of the insanity and then eventually the unmanageability.
Well, let's get back to your story.
Sure.
So you're doing some insane things. You're living with your in-laws. You're stoned all the time. Mm-hmm. It seems like there's something bad right around the corner.
Oh, yeah. So at that time, as I'm on so many pain pills, and they used to, like for a lot of people, I've heard they can make them tired and they want to sleep and not do anything. For me, it energized me.
That's how you got through the day.
Yeah. And so I would go and pick up and chew the pills, try to get the buzz as fast as I could.
How many pills a day do you think you're doing?
Ooh, at my worst at that time, I could take probably 6 to 8, 10 milligrams, so 80 milligrams.
Wow.
Like pretty easily. Chew them all up. Lots of Tylenol in them. I don't know how my liver and kidneys survived that, but yeah.
So
and I would do that 2 or 3 times a day.
Wow. So up to 30 pills a day.
Sure. Easy.
And when does it turn bad for you?
Well, it was bad. I just didn't know how bad it was. I didn't know how much I was hurting my family and my kids and how I was never present. I couldn't be. It was impossible for me.
You were there, but you weren't present.
No, I was not there. Physically, yes, but that was it. Not being a father, not being a husband, not being a good brother or son-in-law. Like I just wasn't there. I couldn't be there for others. You know, it was just about getting mine. And so after being on that, I couldn't sleep at night, so I was prescribed Ambien and Xanax, you know, because I had all of this depression and anxiety, so I needed something else. And so I was doing a lot of Xanax as well as the painkillers and also Ambien. And one morning, it was 2009, I got up to take my son to school, and somewhere in the night I had taken my Ambien to sleep and had gotten up and taken more, and I was literally out of it. I mean, Ambien's a hypnotic, and I loved that too because I just didn't have to feel and I didn't know where I was. And at first it was kind of funny. I'd play video games with my brothers online on Ambien, and they thought it was all kind of funny. But that morning I was going to drive my son to school, and my wife at the time saw me, and she's like, "You're not taking him." And so I was going to go to a job site. I didn't remember going there. I didn't remember leaving. The next thing I remember is I had taken my new FJ Cruiser that I had bought new and ran it into a tree around a curve and totaled it. And that time I kind of came awake as much as I could. Luckily I didn't hit anybody. I could have killed someone, could have killed myself, could have killed my son. And my wife had come and she had taken me to the doctor to try to find out, is he okay? And I was just on all these meds, and they didn't know what was wrong with me. And that was the last time that I spent with my family, because that night I had more Ambien hidden away, and I didn't tell them about it. I'd run out of pain pills, and I was afraid of the withdrawals. So then I started abusing the Ambien because I thought that was going to help me so that I could, you know, wean down and not come off of them so hard, and I could go back to work. I had this great plan, right?
Oh, we all do.
This great thinking. And, you know, sometime that night I had chased my wife around, you know, with around the house. She was scared for her life. I had turned on, and this is after it happened. I don't remember a thing. This is like what she told me, what people that were there told me, my own kids. They were afraid for their mom and their lives. And I don't know if I was possessed or what, but I was literally out of my mind. And she had called 911, and she told me that I told her, yeah, go ahead and call him, have him come. And she was really afraid, and she ended up calling my parents, the bishop, and they all came over. Like my parents drove 2 hours down to come try to save me, to see what was wrong, like what's going on. And I woke up the next day, and she had these bruises on her neck where I had grabbed her. And I felt such shame, you know, and I didn't want to be around anymore. And then it was just about, how do I kill myself? You know, it's just not worth it. It's not worth being here. My parents volunteered to take me with them and get me either into treatment or some type of program. My father and mother at that time had started the ARP program with the church, and so I went with them with the understanding that I was going to get sober, and my wife at the time said, yeah, you just go get some help and we'll be here. And that was the last time we were together, you know. And I stayed sober after starting ARP, and it was a beautiful program based on AA. Loved it.
Yeah, we've had some of their missionaries on.
It was wonderful. Like it really helped me at that time. And then my wife decided that she wanted a divorce. And that was really hard. I stayed sober through that part of it. somehow. Long story short, we ended up getting divorced. And when I thought about that, like not only the divorce, but not being with my kids again, she got remarried shortly after we were divorced. And of course I tried to make that about me, like, you know, why didn't you stick with me? Victimizing again and blaming. Mm-hmm. And not even capable of really seeing it from her side or my children's side or anyone else's side. It was just still all about me. That part I didn't learn in ARP. And so after our divorce, not that long after, I decided that it'd be a good idea to go get drunk because, oh, poor me. And so I picked up alcohol again after being off of it for several years. Not to downplay the pills. That was just like I was drunk, right?
Yeah.
But I went back to drinking and found my own old contact and started picking up from him again and living in my parents' basement, picking up unemployment. And I tried some jobs here or there, but I really wasn't interested in that. I just wanted to not feel anything because, oh, poor me, you know, and blaming everybody else.
Yeah, it's their fault.
Absolutely. So after that period of time, there was a dark period, and that was like 2011.
There was a dark period.
Darker period.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I call it the dark period because I really don't remember it.
Really?
I don't remember much of it.
So this is where you kind of went full blown.
Yeah.
And we're going to find out more about that in just part 2 of this. You're listening to Damion. He's a graduate from Renaissance Ranch. He's also the CFO. I'm Casey, and this is Project Recovery.
The contents of this program are for informational purposes only. The program is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, licensed therapist, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you've heard on this program. KSL does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, physicians, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned on the program. Reliance on any information provided on the program is solely at your own risk.
I'm Dave Cawley, investigative journalist and host of the podcast Cold. In October of 1985, a woman named Cherie Warren left work at a busy Salt Lake City office
to meet her estranged husband at a downtown auto dealership.
She never made it home. Cherie's car surfaced weeks later in Las Vegas.
In the parking lot of a hotel casino.
No one knows how it got there.
Strange. It was strange.
Both Cherie's estranged husband and her boyfriend raised suspicion for investigators.
I kind of thought that he might have done something.
But no arrests were ever made. In Cold Season 3, we dig into double lives, make new connections in the case, and examine the difficulty raised by reasonable doubt.
We want answers just as much as anyone else.
They have creeps like that now too, so nothing's changed.
That's the new Cold Season 3, The Search for Cherie, now available anywhere you get your podcasts.